3D printing is a fun and relaxing way to create anything you can imagine in a really short time. Except it's none of those things, is it? So I wanted to make a mask of Dr Zoidberg from Futurama because I wanted to, and it was Halloween coming up soon, except it was really soon Halloween. I should have probably started this project about a week before I actually started this project, but I did it anyway, and I've learned some lessons. Anyway, let's start at the beginning. Here we are in good old Blender. So I have a model head that I use for everything, and this is scaled the same size of my head, and I measured my head by putting it against a wall near a ruler. I made a basic Zoidberg sort of shape out of a sphere that I sculpted in sculpt mode. You can sort of see some of the stuff there. Then I decided I was going to add some eyeballs, and then like holes for the eyeballs, and then pupils for the eyeballs. All this stuff's easy, and when you're working in 3D software, it's lovely because you can make mistakes, isn't it? And there's an undo button, and then some bits which were the tentacles, and then I sort of merged it all together with like Boolean operations and remeshing and a bit of sculpting and smoothing. Then I worked out where the tentacles were going to go. But I wanted the tentacles to be like flexy, you know, get those like cool flexy snakes and dragons that everyone loves for some reason. I mean, they're brilliant, but you know. Anyway, so I did one. There's one section with a sort of knobble and an intake, whatever, and then you repeat it and make sure the one end's rounded off, and the other end has a little hole for a little nubbin slot, like that. And then you attach that, just double check it fits, and then you're going to get the dangly bits, because Zoidberg did the thing with the tentacles, and that is what I wanted to be for Halloween this year. You know, I've got important stuff to do at Halloween, so I did that. And here it is printed, look, and I'd attached some little holes where you could put in little tiny pegs, but I'd forgotten to print the pegs by this point. This is where it all started to go. I was in a rush, okay? It was days, less than days to go. And I got ill, all right? I was ill. And so look, the glue's jammed as well. Pardon me. And so you can see here, I decided to improvise. And instead of using the carefully designed pegs that I had designed probably just like the day before, I rolled up some paper and shoved that in the peg holes, which worked well enough. And well enough is well enough, you know. And actually this bit did go fairly well. All the bits were in the right place, and it fits together. Look, here it is fitting together. Look, there you go, together it does fit. But of course there were seams, and there's always seams, so a bit of 2-part epoxy putty milliput, which I quite like. It's good. It's sandable, which will come in later, and just sort of shove it in all the holes and then scrape it off, and that, you know, that does work. It works well enough. It filled in the biggest gaps, which is important. You know, see these people with these lovely smooth Iron Man masks. That's what I want. That's the life I want to live. I just want a Zoidberg mask. So Zoidberg mask, and that's anyway. I'm scraping it off here. There you go. And then after that, I tried to be clever, and actually this was sort of clever enough because it wasn't smooth. You can see this is the next day, and I've had a bit of a go at cleaning and sanding it off, but it wasn't quite smooth enough. So I have got some resin from my resin printer, and I just decided to paint that over the top in a lovely thin layer. You have to use thin layers for this because it will only ever cure sort of really thin layers. If you do thick layers, you will end up with bubbles and it'll be weird. So thin layer of resin, and then shine a little UV torch over the top, and that does actually work as a sort of filler for big enough gaps. You have to do lots of repeated layers, but it works, and that was good. That was a success. I was pleased. Then the next step in my never-ending desire for smoothness was some primer filler, which I've used before, and that works quite well, but I was in a rush and I was impatient, and you'll see right now I'm applying it in probably far too thick layers. This is just a snippet. I went over again after I pressed stop on this video and just kept on going, and then I put more layers on, and it bubbled, to be honest, and I had to go back and wipe a load off, and I didn't film that bit. But can you see all the bubbles around there, sort of around the brow area that I'm now having to sand off? This may look fine to you, but it annoyed me. I was in a smoothness. I just wanted, he's a smooth creature, and I wanted that. So I had to sand, and to be honest, I hate sanding. And another bit that I didn't film was where I just took it to an electrical sander, which did work quite nicely actually. So here is me doing some token hand sanding before I used the machine, which I would recommend. Which took me to the point when I was ready to spray here, and sprayed on white for the eyes first, because I was going to mask that bit off later, with the hope that the masking tape would not ruin the whole thing. We'll see how that turns out. And as you can see from this section highlighted here, I was clever here. At least I didn't do it on the main bit. I left it for enough time for me to have gotten bored of waiting, and then tried putting some masking tape on and peeling it off, and it did peel the paint off. But luckily I was clever and then waited at least another half an hour before I masked off the whole thing. But in the meantime, I painted the pupils, and here they are, painting by hand, like an old-fashioned idiot. And then masking, because I decided to use masking tape, even though I knew it was a risky strategy, and I'm really forcing it into the paint there in a possibly foolish strategy. And then, you know, I'm going to just play this whole of this video out, even though there's little to say about it. But, you know, there will be some peeling off of masking tape in a second, and I think that's the kind of stuff that people on social media like, yeah? I don't know. Look, and I've made a mistake. I've cut all the way through the primer there. What a twat. Then we come to the next problem with this build, which is these fucking tentacle things, which look like they should be a good idea, yeah, because they printed, but then they needed painting. And I know what you're thinking, why didn't you just print them out in red PLA? That would have been the obvious thing to do, because painting them when they're all curly like this means painting them from every conceivable angle and then bending them in another way to get in all the gaps, and it takes bloody forever. As you can see, I wasn't a fool, and I did try and print them out in red first, but the red I had got full of some sort of humidity, and they all fused together, and it was just horrible waste of time. And I only had like a half a roll of red, so as I said before, I was in a rush. So I was like, I'll paint it. How difficult can that be? So that went in the bin, and I went out and I bought myself a lovely can of Ford Sunburst Red paint, which looked like the right colour. It was off slightly, but it was good enough. And many layers of painting began to get these all red, so that when they wobbled you couldn't see the grey, which started off seeming like maybe 3 or 4 coats, but it took all flipping day. Until the inevitable happened, when the tiny can of red spray paint just thought, oh, I've got loads of spray paint, ran out, and it was time to go and visit the local town of Dis. But it did mean I got to go and visit the wonderful Dis Car Parts and Accessories. And of course, because it's an excellently stocked shop, they had, where is it? Not Fiat, Ford, there we go, Ford Sunburst Red. So we were good to go. And it was back to one last round of spraying. The actual hat, helmet, head, this bit here, that was like 1 and a bit coats. That was easy. Far less paint than the tentacles, which was nice and both infuriating at the same time. But at least it meant I could then peel off the masking tape, which actually peeled off reasonably well. Well, it sort of appeared to have peeled off reasonably well. There is some sort of bumpiness sort of there where I'm rubbing it with my finger. Just there, you see, which was slightly disappointing. But I'm going to live. I'm going to look at the optimistic side. There's no overspill. It's fine. And the other side was much better. There we go. So next, it was time to glue on the tentacles, which were probably about 80 to 90% red by now, and I'd given up on wanting to paint them anymore. And the gluing was fine. They all glued on first time, and at least PLA does adhere or have super glue adhere to it. It sticks well. It does good sticking, doesn't it? There you go. Look, they all superly well glued. Glue. Then it was time for one last little bit of spraying through the cracks, and then I thought I was going to be really clever, because I just noticed there's a quite slight problem between the eyes. I was like, if I just hold my hands here really carefully and get my wife just to spray paint that bit, and then no, that didn't work at all. Look, there was all bloody red all over those bits. Fuck! But it's alright, so I'll just touch it up really quickly with some white that was slightly the wrong shade, but it's going to look alright from a distance, okay? It's not what I wanted, but the distance view will be fine. But no, it is alright. I'm pleased with it. It's good enough for my party of 11-year-olds that I'm going to, and here I am, dancing in my kitchen. And at this point you realise that I didn't do the claws. No, I realised that I didn't do the claws. No, I didn't do the claws. That wasn't the fucking point, was it? Like the video, follow me around. Press the bell, it makes no sound. Like the video, press subscribe. I don't know why I am alive.